there's a DDA meeting. We can get out of our cell for an hour and a half. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's go. And I was like, what's DDA? And he's like, I don't know. But let's go. And so
we'll give the floor to Bear. He's got quite a story, and
crime offered me an ability to escape myself. It soothed myself. I found temporary relief in my criminal addiction, just as though I found temporary relief in my substance abuse. Right? Despite the negative consequences, guess what? I continued to do it because it was something outside myself that gave me relief. And during some time in my cell, which is my great cloister, my great area where I can be quiet and listen to my thoughts and listen to how I feel, I was like, Bear, I got more than just those two. I also have a gambling piece. I also have an addiction to crime. And that was the moment that Crim-Anon was born. Was that 10 years ago, almost 11 years ago, was when it was first born. And it was just an idea. And I told Corbett, I said, Corbett, I can't wait till I get out, brother, because I'm going to start Criminals Anonymous. It's CA. And yeah, that stands for California, too. Oh, it's CA. It also stands for Cocaine Anonymous. Maybe you can't use CA. And so I was like, I know, maybe I can't, but what about Crim-Anon? I can use Crim-Anon. Yeah. We have a website. It's www.crimanon.org. And our beliefs and the values of Crim-Anon, right, is that we want to live a life. We believe we're all from the chip-away tribe because we chip away every day at this. But we chip away at adding, right, human values to our life. How often, right, did the young person that grew up in an addictive household with criminality, how often did they have a chance to practice human values? How often does a man or woman in prison have a chance to practice human values when survival is the most of necessity that's in their life? Often they don't. And so we want to give them an avenue in Crim-Anon when they join us, right? Taking part of our fellowship to practice human values with us. So my name is Bear. Right? I'm a person in recovery. I would think from the long-term criminal addiction and also substance use disorders. Sometimes in recovery meetings, I introduce myself as quadruple diagnosed. And to me, it's kind of a badge of honor. I have, I'm an alcoholic, I'm addicted to drugs. I also have a mental health piece. I have chronic depression and anxiety. And so I take medications for that. I'm a big supporter for Dual Diagnosis Anonymous. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of DDA. They're the ones that help folks that have a mental health piece and also an addiction piece, dual diagnosis. And the reason why that's so important is because it was the moment that the founder of DDA came into a prison, Coffee Creek, which is this reception center that we have for folks that are going to prison. And I happened to be on my way during a previous incarceration, and I ran into Corbett Monica, and he was the founder of DDA, and he had a DDA meeting, and my roommate at the time came up and said, Bear, there's a DDA meeting, we can get out of our cell for an hour and a half. And I was like, oh my gosh, yeah, let's go. And I was like, what's DDA? And he's like, I don't know, but let's go. And this is on a 23-and-a-half-hour lockdown facility, right before you go out to your normal prison, and you get more rights, you get more, action to getting out of your cell. So we went down to DDA, and there Corbett Monica was, leaning up against the desk, and he says, there's nothing in the world that makes me feel like I feel right now being here with you. And that's where our relationship started, Corbett and mine. I love that man. And so I got settled and went to Columbia River Correctional for my sentence. And Corbett was connected with me, and I started to run a DDA meeting. But he talked about the mental health piece, and he talked about the addiction piece. Your local shoplifter, we call them boosters, right? But your local shoplifter will get high off of that. To the criminal lifestyle is the next piece. People are addicted to the lifestyle, right? And living at 140 instead of just 100 or 90 or 80. And then the self-image that's attached to it. And so often our self-image is attached to who we were in the street, that we're this survivor, that we're this maybe violent person that could do harm, and therefore people did what we asked them or left us alone. All of those things encompassed into our first step, right? And the last piece, that our lives have become unmanageable. That's the first step of Crim-Anon. And so I went to a local artist, and our local artists they're not at the earthy part of a city when you're in prison. They're usually out on a steel table with all their drawing supplies, and they're drawing as they go. And I said, can you make us a logo for CA? And he made this really cool logo, right, with this Avenger A on it, right? And this is still today, right? I have the original piece. It was done in little pens. And to this day, this is what we use on our T-shirts and in the community and on our website. We use this beautiful art piece that was drawn for us by hand. How do you make a big circle by hand? It's like about this big. It was great. So that's where we were born, right? And so it took a few years to get traction and actually start. And I actually had to go back to prison. I got so busy when I first got out of that set, and I was talking about Crim-Anon, and all of a sudden an opportunity came up for a grant, and it was $320,000 grant. I went back to college when I got out after I had met Corbett. My first week I got out, he said, "Barry, you got to go down to the Capitol and receive an award for DDA." He says, "The Attorney General is giving it. They want you to share your story to a bunch of senators and House of Representatives." And so I went down there my first week out and received this award for DDA. And so he worked really closely with us. And during that time, I went back to prison. Of course, I was very busy with starting the nonprofit that had that big grant. I didn't know how to write a grant. I was in the middle of midterms. I had one computer here and I was writing the grant, and I had the other computer and I was working on my midterms, and I didn't think I could get it in on time. It was coming close to the cutoff date, to the closeout assignment, and I went to Subway and I sat in my truck and I asked God, I said, "There's no way I can do this." And he spoke to me. It's like the only word that he ever really has said. And he said, "Try." It was a real word. And I went back and I finished that grant. And we outscored the other professional nonprofits by 150 points. And we got our first grant. And we opened our first program for the 50 worst recidivists in Clackamas County. Those were our people. Those were our participants. And the first year of our program, we had a 12% recidivism rate. That's pretty good, right?
That's very good.
Right?
Hugely good.
Our second year, we had a 5.4% recidivism rate.
You guys know what that is?
And,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Recidivism, going back, right? Going back. Committing another crime and going back to incarceration, right? And one of the things that we did was we encircled our programs with a community of belonging and encouragement. And so these were all the testing waters for Crim-Anon that I hadn't even done yet. But we named that organization Iron Tribe. Iron because we had been in trouble, and Tribe because we were a family. And Iron Tribe is alive and well today. They have 42 homes in the Portland metro area that are helping people, our people, right, to live different lives. They have support group meetings in the community. And it's where we started. It was like my teaching grounds, right, for Crim-Anon. And I didn't even know, because I got so busy doing that, Crim-Anon got put on the back shelf, right? And so, but my criminal addiction didn't, right? So eventually I jumped off Mount Everest, all right? And I relapsed. And I landed at the bottom of Mount Everest. I don't know if you ever have, but spread eagle on a big boulder. It was very painful. And I landed. All right, there I was back in prison again, scratching my head, wondering what is different? What can I do different? Right? I don't know why I'm coming back. I continue to come back. Right? And I can imagine, right? My sister and my mother, right? Having lived all that incarceration time with me through letters and through sending money for canteen, right? Little ho, my mom used to call it little ho-hos and zoom-zooms. And she'd send me the ho-hos and zoom-zoom money, and I'd say, Mom, thanks so much, man, I love you. And she was my greatest supporter. And you know, full circle today, I think about things. You know, thanks for following my mind, because I jump a lot. Right? It's part of my mental health, right? But is everybody tracking me okay?
Yeah.
All right. So, but I've realized as of late that the biggest crime that I ever committed was the stealing away of time away from my mother, my sister, and my family. Of having to look at pictures in prison, right, stuck on my wall with toothpaste. Having to walk that same track in the prison, year after year after year, pretending it was different. And having to say goodbye to my dying mother and my father inside of prison. I remember talking to my mom when she was on a ventilator. And I said, Mom, I said, I'm starting Crim-Anon. And she said, I love you, son. She said, I'm proud of you. So my mom said her last words was that I'm proud of you. And you bet your bottom dollar that I was starting Crim-Anon. And that today we're growing. And so we got out, right? I didn't get out first. My buddy, who I call the co-founder of Crim-Anon, Zane Macheski, he's with his daughter at her birthday today. He couldn't be here. But with Zane, we sat right next to each other. And he showed me his paperwork. And I think this is where the revitalization of Crim-Anon, its importance, hit my mind again, hit my heart again, became the mission in my heart. He said, look at this paperwork. He says, they're talking about aging me out. They said that I'm unable to be, change. I'm unable to change. They wanted to age me out. And so the sentences get harsher and harsher and harsher. And I said, my God, that's a travesty. I said, we can change our lives. I said, let's start Crim-Anon. And so I studied for 2 years, my last incarceration. And I studied in books, right, that were from our teachers and our guides, right? I remember walking up these steps, and this is in my mind, of course, because I don't walk very well today. But I walked up these steps, it's about 200 of them, and I opened these big doors, and sat with the Dalai Lama through his teachings, through the words, while I'm on my bunk with his books open. And I said, you know, this is I had to wade through this. I have an ADD as well. It's secret in my life. But I had to read multiple times to understand the concepts that were being put forward. But you know what? I said, our community, our people need these gifts of life, right? And so the goal was to become more peaceful. The goal was to find happiness in my life. And so how are we going to get there? I knew at that moment that the criminal addiction existed. And so I went to this thing, and I don't know if we have any counselors in the room, but I went to this thing called the DSM. It's a diagnostic manual for folks, if you're a counselor or you're a psychologist. And you actually, identify which ones fit the person that you're working with. And so I read the gambling disorder, right? And what was cool about the gambling disorder was that they had a set of questions. There was 9 questions at the beginning of this part of the DSM to see whether you were a problem gambler whether you were a compulsive gambler or whether you were addicted to gambling, you're an addict. And so you had the disorder, right? And so I said, man, and they called it a process addiction. They called it a behavioral addiction. And that was another big bell, right? We got the bells that go off in our lives, but another big bell hit my mind, and I was like, I should rework that questionnaire, but do it with crime. Do it with the criminal, right? Elements. And so I reworked all the questions. I went to the administration of the jail that I was in at the time, on my way back to prison, and it was a VOA, Volunteers of America. I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they do a lot of programming in Portland. And they said, sure, you can use it. We'll help you do it. And so they printed out the 9 questions. And so I made, there were 72 guys in the dorm. And so I made copies of the questionnaires, and I handed it out to all 72 men. And we went over every question. And 64 of them answered yes to every single question. There were 64, again, this is my own study, it's not approved by the, whatever I say.
I approve it.
Right, I approve this was a subjective, right, but subjective study, but so they all said yes.
Qualitative.
Right, it's qualitative. Yes to 64 of them, and I was like blown away, right? And I went on in my presentation and I asked everybody, I said, what would your criminal addiction look like if we were to give it a shape? Because you know, when my mother was passing away and I was on that phone with her, I got back to the block and immediately the guards took me out of the block because they thought I might do something violent, you know, since my mother was passing away. And they took me to a psychologist, to a counselor. And I sat down with him and he asked me that same question. What would my addiction, my criminal addiction look like? And I said, an elephant. No, an elephant. And so that elephant's been with me ever since I've been young. You know, he's grown into an adult elephant. But he's best friends with my addiction. Yeah.
Can you say more about that? Why, how that image comes to you and what that represents?
Yeah, my elephant was just a baby elephant when I was first starting as a young man in my addiction. It was my friend, right? I greeted my elephant through a television set, you know, in my grandmother's living room. And he kept hanging out with me wherever I would go, right? I used to lead him around on a leash, on this imaginary leash. There's no one else could see him, but he was my friend. And today my elephant is this old elephant that has lots of scars on him, right? Through all the different experiences that we've done and been through together. I'm working on a book. It's called The Story of L. That's the nickname for my elephant. And so it's the story of my criminal addiction. And so that'll be coming out. I can't wait to get you some copies, but I'm working on the chapters right now. And so to me, that was what it meant, right? I never thought about looking inside myself. I was always looking outside myself. I was very other-directed in my life. I wasn't self-directed, right? And today I'm more self-directed, right? This is my journey to recovery. But I asked those guys in that room, what would your criminal addiction look like? And one person said, a 300-pound gorilla. And another person raised their hand, Robin Hood. And then another person, this guy was over in the corner and he had tears in his eyes. And he was leaning up against this pillar, I'll never forget it. And he said, a room with no windows or doors. There was no way out for him. Think of that, how that felt to have no escape. Think about the prison, right? That those that suffer from the criminal addiction often live in. It's very lonely. I would like to say today, right? I knew that I had to have something else. I got to Coffee Creek Correctional. I went to the administration. I said, can we have a room once a week? Can we have a Crim-Anon think tank? I believe that Criminals Anonymous Fellowship should be born inside a prison. And the administration said, yes, Bear, we remembered what you did with Iron Tribe. And now I was back in prison, right? We remember what you did, so we were going to do this for you. We want you to leave us with the steps and the precepts for your program before you leave. That's the deal. I said, okay. And so they put us in a room. There's a window, there's a glass window where he was our sponsor. So he was the programs manager, Mr. Hanley at Columbia River. I put your name out there, Mr. Hanley. Mr. H, right, was our sponsor. And so he would just sit in his room. He never interrupted us. And we would all get together. And I invited my brothers that were African American. I invited my brothers that were Native American and the brothers that were Latino to come and sit with us. A lot of them have been my partners on the weight pile, right? That's where we always met. They all came in and were a part of the development of our steps and our precepts. I wrote the steps and precepts, but I would bring one to each meeting and we'd talk about the relevance of it and what it meant to us. And so there were changes that happened over the next year and a half, right, before I got out. But I left them with the steps and the precepts right before COVID. Once COVID hit, everything shut down, you know. But once after COVID, right, we are coming back alive. And guess what? I just reached out to Mr. Hanley. And I'm going to be heading back into Columbia River Correctional. I'm doing my background check now. You have to be out 5 years to go back in. And guess what? I've been out 5 years, right? I just celebrated 7 years clean, sober, and crime-free. Yeah, okay. So it's a lot of fun. Man, I've learned so much about myself through these last 7 years, this discovery process of myself. And I really believe that the compassionate person, the person that has empathy and practices empathy in their life each day, won't commit crime, given the chance that they're in their sober state of mind, right? My addictions and my criminality are best friends. You know, Al, he would hold hands, right, with my substance use, and they would walk down the street of sorrows with me each day, no problem, right? Trying to give me this fake answer that never worked, that never applied, you know. And I welcome Al. This pendant that I have is a symbol of Al. There's Al if you ever want to say hi to him. He's on my neck today, right? I carry him with me wherever I go. He's not alive, you know, and actuating anything that would cause harm to anybody today, but he's learning along with me, right? He's been a part of my learning. And so we created, we brought out Crim-Anon out to the community. Zane brought it out, and guess what? He couldn't find any place that would allow a bunch of ex-criminals to meet. A group of criminals in our church? Are you serious? No. Right? I'm sorry, this community center? No, we're not really wanting criminals. It's Criminals Anonymous Fellowship. This is the opposite. Our motto is live crime free. Right? You know, this is what we're trying to do. Right? It was so funny, we started putting our symbol on our shirts, and guess what happened the first week that we had sold a bunch of our sweatshirts? That someone relapsed on their criminality and wore one of our shirts to protect themselves and got caught on camera walking into someone's yard to steal a generator, okay? That was bad publicity, right?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. We were just appalled, right? You know, all the elders, you know, this isn't what we stood for, right? And I think, you know, with time, we finally found this church that would let us meet in their kitchen. And at first, you know, there was 20 people, there was 30 people, there was 40 people, and at its height, right before COVID, there was over 100 people trying to push into this little kitchen on the side of the church to meet. And we had to go outside. We put our chairs in circles, right? And I love this circle because in the circle, in the Native traditions, which I follow in my life, everybody is equal. in the circle, right? There's no one in front and there's no one behind. This is the center of our universe, and we're here together right now at this moment. Right? And there's nothing in the world that makes me feel better than that. Be here with you. And it's and that's how we set our meeting up, because we couldn't fit in the little kitchen. So we have thenceforth, right, started opening up, we call it in-community meetings. So we have them throughout the week in the Portland metro area. We have them in all the 3 counties that are there, Multnomah, Clackamas, and Washington County. And we found recovery centers started to partner with us. 4D, a youth community center, we have a Crim-Anon's meeting in each one of their locations in each county. And then we said, man, we got to get our meetings inside the treatment centers. So we contacted the big treatment centers that are in Portland metro area, and we have meetings that go in for the men and both the women, and Volunteers of America and For Health and CODA. And so we're reaching in, we call them in-reach meetings. And so as they finish their treatment, they come out. Guess who they come out to? They come out to our community of belonging and encouragement. And guess what happens to folks that join a community of belonging and encouragement? We found out that they model the beliefs and the values of the group. And so you'll see at our meetings, we have many, many different folks that come. Our meetings are very colorful. On any given Wednesday night at the Miracles Club, which is an African American recovery club in Portland, you'll see 80 different folks come in there. Treatment centers come in, right? Individuals come in. Probation officers come in. Not in their gear. We ask them to please wear street clothes, right? Because some people have trauma that's around that, right? Associated with that.
Yeah.
We like to be sensitive to trauma, right? We have that narrative, right? We want to change that narrative. We want to write a new narrative for our lives. And we believe that the cultivation of human values as a group, right, give us the chance to live a different life. We just added this affirmations sheet to our meetings. And so we'll read affirmations. So often we were used to that negative, right, self-talk. We're used to judging ourselves harshly, right? Our first step in Crim-Anons, we admitted that we suffered an attachment. I used a little Eastern philosophy. The Dalai Lama insisted on that, right? We suffered an attachment to crime, the act of crime, right? You get high off of doing crime. You don't need drugs to get high off of doing crime. Many people are addicted to the rush. In our workbooks, we go over each step. And so in our fellowship, there's this there's kind of this leadership, right, that's built into our 12 steps and our 12 precepts. We call it our sacred quest. So there's a little bit of that, imagery that's a part of our steps and our precept. Really, Bear? A sacred quest? I believe I could go on one of those. Right? And then you have your sacred path. Well, what's the sacred path, Bear? Our 12 steps and our 12 precepts. And what are you in search of, Bear? I'm in search of my sacred self, my true self, right? I know what I don't want to be, and I don't really know how to be the other thing. I remember sitting in the cell at OSP. I had to get a piece of paper. I was so lost. I grabbed a piece of paper and wrote down who I wanted to be, because I lost who I was. I remember a brother coming up to me and going, Bear, he says, I'm so tired. He says, I'm so tired of using, I have to stop. I'm so tired of doing crime. And I said, yeah, but you know what else you're tired of? You're tired of not feeling. Of not feeling true emotion. I was so tired of not being able to feel. When you turn your conscience off and you do crime, you lose your ability to feel. And you do it over and over and over again, and you become so disjointed from feeling that it's something foreign. And you're able to do terrible and awful things because you don't feel anyway. So how would you actually connect to someone else's feelings? You can't. And so part of our mission in Crim-Anon, right, is to make a community where feeling is a necessity of life. where feeling, right, is promoted, where tears, right, are celebrated. And our beliefs and the values of Crim-Anon, right, is that we want to live a life. We believe we're all from the Chippewa tribe because we chip away every day at this. But we chip away at adding, right, human values to our life. How often, right, did the young person that grew up in an addictive household with criminality, how often did they have a chance to practice human values? How often does a man or woman in prison have a chance to practice human values when survival is the most necessity that's in their life? Often they don't. And so we want to give them an avenue in Crim-Anon when they join us, right? Taking part of our fellowship to practice human values with us. I'm so proud to be a part of it with Crim-Anon. And we are 100% volunteer. So most of the money would go to get bracelets, right? Because we go into the treatment centers, we don't charge them or take a donation. But we're kind of hand to hand right now, but we love it. Well, we couldn't be in a richer place in our life. It's coming from our hearts, you know. And thank you so much for asking. And we want to start to do a newsletter that we can send you and update you on everything that's going on. We have started chapters in Portland. In Newport, we have a chapter of Crim-Anon. It's been there for a few years. Eastern Oregon, there's a chapter in Pendleton coming up. But yeah, chapters are starting, right? People are wanting. We have a chapter in St. Helens in Columbia County that just started again after COVID. And Idaho, and we have one in Medford. At the I have Golden Rule Reentry, right? Let's give a plug for him. But Golden Rule Reentry started the chapter in Medford, and Desmond, who couldn't be here today, is our elder that started that chapter. So we're very proud to be coming down to Southern Oregon and having an impact, right? We have about 3,500 members that aren't doing crime. They're getting their lives back. That's getting their children back, right? That actually, I just got a text from Samantha. She's one of our elders. Guess what they did? They bought their first home. And they're both elders. Her husband was in federal court facing 70 months. And we filled the courtroom up with Crim-Anon members wearing our shirts and our hoodies. And the judge looked out at us and recognized us. And when it came time to sentencing, they couldn't sentence him to 70 months. The judge said, I'll give you a year and a day. And he went for 3 months and was able to come back to his family. Those are people, you know what I mean? We've walked there with them. And we're able to proudly say that we stand together as a community. You know, we make a difference. We have a website, it's www.crimanon.org.